Welcome to I Love This Thing So Freaking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Alison, a former Michigander and current Walt Disney World cast member. Welcome to the show, Alison.
Thanks, Sophie. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you here. So, here is how this works. Alison will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Alison?
Ready.
Great. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so freaking much?
Well, I love a lot of things so freaking much, but today I want to talk about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. For those of you who don't know what it is a DreamWorks animation reboot of an old 1980s series of the same name. It's about an orphan girl who's a warrior, and she finds a magical sword, and she transforms into the warrior princess She-Ra, who unites a rebellion to fight against evil. So that's just a brief synopsis of what it's about. But it's got fantasy, it's got sci-fi. You know, it blends the limits of magic and science together as one, and it even involves crystals. If people are into that kind of, crystal energy type thing, they do talk about that lot in the show. The main character is Adora. She was raised by the evil Horde. So she transforms into a warrior princess with the magic words for the honor of Grayskull. When she finds this sword, she meets Glimmer and Bow. Glimmer is a princess and Bow is her best friend who is all into gadgets and technology. So Adora learns that the world she knows is not exactly what she thought it was. So it's very, jarring for her to discover that she was lied to her entire life. So she actually defects from the evil Horde, and she leaves behind her best friend Catra, who is feeling very betrayed and seeks vengeance. So the show follows Adora and her friends as she learns more about her power with the sword, and learning more about She-Ra and what this planet and these, this supposed first one's technology is. So I love the show so much. I discovered it a few years ago. I'm a big fan of animated shows, cartoons, especially ones that discuss more adult themes, as well as, touch on some subjects that are a little different for a lot of kids growing up these days. One of the great things about the show, it is very diverse with their cast and characters, as well as very inclusive, especially with the LGBT QIA community. It's wonderful to introduce a lot of kids and a lot of other people who may not know about it into this new world and these new, topics that not everybody is fully aware of in today's world. And I think that's really, the gist of it for the 3 minutes. I mean, we can delve deeper into it as the podcast goes on, but I love this frickin' thing so much.
We absolutely can delve deeper. Thank you for telling us about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power today.
Well, thanks. It's exciting. It's a really good show, and I just love to tell people about it. I'm like, watch it, please.
Could you tell us a bit about maybe some favorite characters or favorite moments that really stand out in the show for you?
Oh, definitely. Okay, let's see here. I have jotted down a few things that I can talk about. So there are a lot of different princesses that they discuss in the show, and each one has a very specific ability based on the region of the world that they are from, which is really cool. My personal favorite, her name is Entrapta. She has these giant purple pigtails that kind of work almost like octopus tentacles. They can move around, they can pick up things, and she's very, aloof, and she doesn't really spend a lot of time with people. She spends more time with machines than people. So she's just kind of, off in her own little world, but then she gets introduced and she finally makes friends. And watching her journey through the show is really interesting, because she used to be like, whoa, this is a social experiment, how exciting. And she saw people as test subjects and not as like other human beings that she could communicate with. So it's really cool to see her journey through the show, because she is hysterical. Seahawk is a pirate. We don't see him very much, but he's connected most with Mermista, the mermaid princess, and he sings sea shanties, and I'm a huge fan of sea shanties, so whenever that kicks on, it's just real exciting, just because he's hysterical. He's fond of setting boats on fire for no particular reason other than it's fun. And then Scorpia. Scorpia is actually I'm trying not to delve too much into, spoiler territory in the event that our listeners do end up watching it, but I'll just say Scorpia is a horde captain. She has claws for hands, and she actually has a scorpion tail, hence the name Scorpia. And she is very different from other force captains within the evil horde. She's actually very caring. She's almost very motherly. So her introduction, she's all hidden in the dark and everything, and then she jumps out and she's introduced to Catra, and she goes, "Kitty!" And instantly you decide that she is your best friend. She's going to be the best part of the show. And as the show progresses too, she realizes that being with the horde isn't necessarily the best thing for her. So it's exciting to see where her journey goes as well. So those are only like a few of the characters that I really love besides the main characters, that's for sure. But the great thing about this show is that each character has their moment to shine, regardless of if the three main characters are in the vicinity. So they have their own little side missions, their own little, nuances and journeys that they go on, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with the main character, or she doesn't need to be directly involved with it, which is really great.
And that's something that's not super easy to do with such a large cast, making sure that it's not, it is Adora's story, but it's also everyone else's.
Exactly, yeah, because in a way, if you think about it, when the show starts, Adora doesn't even have any knowledge of these people or what they're all about. So they already existed in their own worlds and their own journeys before Adora was thrust into it as their new hero. So it's really cool to be able to explore that as their world evolves with Adora joining it. But it doesn't necessarily have to connect to her, which is really, really incredible.
You mentioned in your talk that this is a cartoon that's like other cartoons you like, which tend to focus on more quote-unquote adult themes. I'm putting that in quote-unquote because when we say adults, there seems to be this connotation of must be inappropriate for children, but it seems more like, well, maybe more serious than you would expect to have in a quote-unquote kids show. Could you talk a little more about how these themes show up in this show?
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I probably should have said more serious tones, just because when you go into the adult, you start to think like, oh, this is like a Rick and Morty type thing where it's a bit vulgar, and that is not the case at all. So this show is a bit more serious just because, it shows the effects of war on these characters. I don't like to compare it, but I'm going to just for the sake of, trying to relate it to something else. It's very similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, with the themes of war and these young kids being thrust into this confrontation in order to protect their homes, their families, their way of life from an invading force that, is trying to take over this planet for no other reason than just to, conquer and to dominate. So it's really incredible how they show these things, as well as PTSD and how it's affected some characters, physically or emotionally. It's really wonderful to see. And it doesn't sugarcoat these things in the show either. It may look all pretty and colorful and cartoony, but it doesn't brush over it. It attacks these things head on just so they can discuss it openly, and the bonds of friendship and how you need to rely on your friends when you are struggling instead of trying to take care of things yourself, which for me personally is a really big deal because I tend to try to stay to myself and not, bother people with my issues. But the show really kind of made me realize I'm like, I should probably be better about keeping in touch with friends and, reaching out to them. So that's one thing that the show's made me realize as a, 20-something adult. It's really incredible. And, I kind of went off on a tangent there. I apologize.
No, it is very clear, like, what personal effect this show has had on you, and all it's making me think is having this profound effect on someone much earlier in their life, that's quote-unquote target audience for a show like She-Ra, the children whose parents maybe put it on because, it's a superhero girl who goes fights with her friends and she has a unicorn that can fly, and then also it's teaching you that sometimes serious bad stuff happens and sometimes you come out feeling really bad about it, but you deserve help. And again, I don't want to, like you said, don't want to get too much into spoilers, but that's definitely one of the main themes of the show, is I took away from it when I watched it, is you deserve help. You deserve a family. You deserve support as you're facing all this potentially horrible stuff.
Exactly. And, you know, these characters are thrown into a lot of things that they're not prepared for. And they face new villains each season, but they all have the same common goal and the same common, you know, evil, for lack of a better description. And it's just really wonderful to see that discussed in a children's show. Well, because it's geared towards children, obviously, but I'm a huge fan of cartoons, so I'm just like, it's not just for kids, come on.
And at the same time, all of the characters that you mentioned as your favorites, you talked about how hilarious they were and how much you enjoyed them. That we can talk about all the serious stuff the show does, and at the same time, it's interwoven with humor and joy.
It is. It really is. It's awesome.
Alison, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Like, I love to share things that I love.
Absolutely. Thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, or our guest Alison, you can find her social media information in the episode description. And don't forget to use the hashtag #LoveThisThingCast to tell us about the things you love. I Love This Thing So Frigging Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed by Sophie A. Katz and edited by Melissa Block. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU, the window, at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.